The Star Wars fandom is broken. I mean, spend 5 minutes in a Star Wars comment section, and you'll find people calling each other fake fans, Disney shills, misogynists, racists, tourists, grifters, and culture warriors. But here's the strange thing. I don't think the sequels actually caused this. Because, I mean, we've had bad Star Wars before. I mean, the prequels were mocked for years. And yet, somehow, the fandom survived. So what changed? Why did one trilogy create arguments that still haven't ended nearly a decade later? Because the thing that broke Star Wars wasn't the movies. It was what happened after them. Hello there, and welcome to today's video. Now, I recently started checking my Star Wars video catalog to, see what I'd done and what people had enjoyed, on the hunt for new ideas, you understand. And then I noticed something. My Star Wars comment sections were pretty polarizing when you actually stopped and looked at them. So I started doing a bit of digging around the other Star Wars YouTube channels out there, and I noticed a pretty similar thing in their comment sections as well. And that made me stop and think about, why that is. Why is Star Wars discourse just so vitriolic, no matter what side you're on? Has Disney's making of bad movies and shows really caused all this caustic hate? Today, that's exactly what we're going to find out. Because if bad movies were enough to destroy a fandom, Star Wars would have died decades ago. Now, it would be easy to say that Disney simply made bad Star Wars and leave it at that. And, maybe that explains some of the apathy, but it doesn't explain the hostility. It doesn't explain why Star Wars fans seem to spend more time fighting each other than just discussing Star Wars itself. Star Wars has had bad movies before, right? The holiday specials are atrocious and really would be best forgotten about. And, while I've got videos planned about the prequels not being as hated as everyone seems to remember, they still received their fair share of criticism. There's no denying that. Midichlorians were pretty universally despised, and many still say online that George Lucas ruined their childhoods with that particular trilogy. Hayden Christensen effectively became the poster boy for fanbase hatred, but only because Ahmed Best was driven to near suicide for playing the role of Jar Jar Binks, and did his best to dip out of the spotlight. Yet, despite it all, the fanbase survived. But why? The answer is simple, honestly. Despite everything, people were still arguing about Star Wars. To return to Ahmed Best for a moment, he has said himself that he put so much of himself into the character that when Jar Jar drew such intense hatred and criticism, he interpreted that criticism really personally. And look, I'm not going to stand here and tell you that none of that criticism leaked over to the actor himself. I can guarantee you it absolutely did, and that's just pathetic. The fans crossed lines back then just like they do now. But there is an important difference. The conversation was still about Star Wars. Not politics, not morality, not even identity, just Star Wars. You could hate Attack of the Clones and still be a Star Wars fan. Nobody was out there questioning your character for it, but then, well, things changed. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh god, here we go again, blaming Rian Johnson because he subverted your expectations. Get over it. But it's not what you think it is. Yes, this is where Rian Johnson enters the picture, but not because he broke Star Wars. He's here because he symbolizes the tangible shift that happened behind the scenes. I don't know about you, but I still remember the build-up to The Last Jedi. I remember YouTube channels being built solely on the videos trying to figure out who Snoke was. Where did he come from? What was his relationship to Luke? How did he amass so much power? What was his relationship to Kylo Ren? Was he even a Sith? And I still remember the photo of Rian Johnson holding the post-it note saying, "Your Snoke theory sucks." At first, fans were kind of jokingly brushing it off, but then we watched the movie and we looked back at that image a bit differently. Now, whether he meant it as a joke or not, many fans interpreted that image as contempt for their investment in the story. And the marketing around the film was really keen on telling us that this was a Star Wars film none of us were expecting. That it did its own thing and it was amazing because of it. And then we watched the movie and Well, I'm sure you guys know the rest. There was immense fan backlash aimed at the writing of Luke's character, the controversial Canto Bight subplot, and the seeming disregard for the prior movies. But then something happened. See, Rian Johnson had put morals and themes into his movie that made people feel a certain way. Now, whether those themes were intentional or not, many viewers began interpreting the film through a political lens. Others began interpreting criticism through that same political lens. And before long, conversations that had started as debates about writing and character choices were being reframed as debates about identity and ideology. When people started criticizing the Canto Bight subplot, media companies started pivoting, saying that Star Wars fans were actually racist because they hated Kelly Mary Tran. When fans criticized the writing for Luke, media companies again began to twist it and say that toxic male fans were angry because their expectations had been subverted. The problem here is that criticism stopped being interpreted as disagreement. It started being interpreted as hostility. Once criticism started being viewed through a political lens, something else happened. People stopped arguing about movies and started arguing about what those movies supposedly said about the people watching them. And the consequence was that two groups really started to form. The first group was comprised of people who disliked the sequels. Some had genuine story criticism, some were acting in bad faith, some were culture warriors, some of them just missed Luke. And all of them got grouped together. All of them got labeled toxic fans. The second group was comprised of people who loved the sequels. Some of them genuinely loved the movies. Some of them really liked the themes. Some of them just appreciated the new direction, while others viewed the movies and criticisms aimed against them through a political lens. But all of them got grouped together. All of them were labeled woke SJWs. And once those labels appeared, it became incredibly difficult for anyone to change their mind. Because people weren't just defending movies anymore, they were defending themselves. Because if someone tells you your opinion is wrong, you can disagree. But if someone tells you your opinion makes you a bad person, well, you're going to fight back. And the problem is that both groups were being egged on by the media and the people behind the movies at Disney. So now, no one was really discussing the films. They were just defending their tribe. Because once somebody says, you only dislike this because you're sexist, the debate is no longer about Star Wars. And once the other person replies, you only like this garbage because you're woke, the conversation is over. Because neither side is bothering to discuss the movie anymore. They're simply defending their allotted tribe. But this didn't have to be a permanent reality. I mean, things actually looked like they might be getting better when The Mandalorian first released. I mean, for a brief moment, it felt like Star Wars might actually heal. Fans who had spent years arguing suddenly had something they could agree on. But then things went downhill pretty fast. The Rise of Skywalker arrived, and it reopened every wound The Last Jedi had left behind. But it reignited the old arguments because there were new diverse characters, and to be honest, Kelly Mary Tran got shafted. Then Kathleen Kennedy kept talking about her agenda with Star Wars at every opportunity, ostensibly goading the fans and putting all the blame at their feet, rather than acknowledging her own responsibility. The Lucasfilm leadership, the people who were running Star Wars, were quickly losing the trust of the very fans they were relying on. Fans maybe could have been pacified if Disney was consistently putting out good content, but Disney kept choosing the laziest option. And every time they released a show that wasn't written well or didn't respect what had come before, fans would criticize it. But those criticisms would be deflected onto some poor actor who was pre-warned that the fans would turn against them because all fans were toxic and racist. This in turn led to even further breakdowns in trust between audiences and creators, because the fans felt like they weren't allowed to be honest, while the creators felt like they weren't allowed to do what they really wanted to do. And social media was there the entire time in the background, pouring gasoline on the fire to make a stand on political ideology and belief systems, at the expense of a film franchise. It continuously sowed the seeds of conflict, with Disney and the media refusing to accept criticism and instead calling fans out for toxicity. And The Acolyte really cemented this pattern. Before the series even came out, people had chosen sides. They were assuming motives. Nobody trusted anybody. And then the series came out and it was the mess. It was poorly written by a showrunner who actively confirmed that she'd written it as therapy for herself. A showrunner who, when the series wasn't being watched all too much and receiving heavy criticism, promptly turned around and said that she knew fans would hate it because they're toxic dude bros who don't like their toys being played with. And again, social media ran with it, further stoking the flames again and again because the controversy surrounding Star Wars was generating more clicks than simply talking about what was happening at a franchise level. Algorithms started working in tandem with angry fans and irritated creators to generate revenue streams as each battle was amplified and then exploited. And that's really the important point. Not whether, the Acolyte or any other Disney Star Wars was any good or not. Point is that both fans and creatives behind the camera approached the series expecting a fight. Have approached almost all the series expecting a fight. And that's the evidence that a fan base is fractured. But what makes the damage permanent is the lack of trust. Because once trust disappears, every new project gets filtered through suspicion. Now, when a fan sees a trailer, they're not asking, is this any good? They're asking, what agenda is this pushing? Meanwhile, someone else isn't asking, is this any good? They're asking, which outrage channels are going to complain about this now? Nobody is evaluating the project itself anymore. They're evaluating the tribe surrounding it. And that's what makes the damage persistent. And the worst part is, the real victim in all of this is Star Wars. A beautiful cinematic property that brought joy to millions and cemented itself as a beloved pop culture juggernaut. For many fans, it felt like the relationship had changed. Instead of being treated as customers whose opinions mattered, they've increasingly felt like obstacles to be managed. All the while, creators and algorithms continue to generate controversy for clicks because, well, it was more profitable to say that Rian Johnson destroyed Star Wars than it was to say that The Last Jedi had some serious writing flaws in a title. And the ultimate consequence of all these choices aren't just the arguments, it's the apathy. Most normal fans don't want to spend every day fighting online over mediocre content. They'd rather just walk away. And that's the part people miss. Most fans don't become culture warriors. Most fans don't become outrage channels. Most fans just leave. So instead, the loudest voices become those of the outrage channels, the culture warriors and the corporate defenders. Not because they don't love Star Wars, many of them do, but because the conversation increasingly rewards conflict over appreciation. The result? Your average fans disappear. Star Wars stops being this special, shared cultural phenomenon, and instead becomes a battlefield where you're either with me or you're my enemy. The sequels didn't break Star Wars. Plenty of franchises survive bad movies. What broke Star Wars was convincing fans that disagreement was hatred. Because once criticism becomes a moral issue, nobody can back down. Every discussion becomes a fight. Every movie becomes a referendum. Every fan becomes a soldier defending a flag. And eventually, well, people just stop talking about Star Wars altogether. They just talk about each other. And that's why the fandom feels broken. Not because we disagree, but because we forgot how to. But for my part, I hope that people are still willing to talk Star Wars. To disagree with each other and laugh about the silly things that really don't make sense in the galaxy far, far away. That even when we're being critical, we're still doing it out of love for a beautiful thing and not simply to prove ourselves right. I mean, I miss when Star Wars fans argued about whether Mace Windu could beat Darth Vader, or whether Han shot first, or whether the Death Star exhaust port made any sense. Because those arguments were about Star Wars. And today, it feels like Star Wars is just the excuse. But hey, that's just my opinion, I guess. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with you.